I can't hear you.
Aye, aye, Captain. So, Dave, who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
Uh, Not Patrick, right?
No, 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 no. But who does he work for? And who is that character? Because we're avoiding copyright here.
Okay.
Who is that character's big rival? And what is the name? Actually, no.
Mm.
How am I? It's not. I don't know how to get to barnacles.
Barnacles. There we go.
Barnacles. Because it's not anything related to barnacles, and Mr. Krabs is not a barnacle, famously. So, and if you can't guess the show we're talking about, you need to seriously reassess the choices you've made in your life.
We'll send a link.
We'll send we'll send a link for those unaware, but it does involve a very square character. Anyways, we're talking about barnacles today. I tried to do a whole reference, it didn't work. Barnacles. Why are we talking about barnacles, Dave?
Well, barnacles are growing on a lot of ships that are sitting out in the Strait of Hormuz.
So currently there are about 800 merchant ships stranded in the Gulf after the commencement of hostilities around February 28th. By the way, they have about 20,000 seafarers on those ships just sitting in the Gulf. And I can tell you, and Dave can tell you, that one of the big characteristics of the Persian or Arabian Gulf during the summer is that it's really hot. I would say very hot.
Yes.
It's also very shallow. It is a shallow body of water, and these ships have essentially just been sitting there now for over 2 months. So they are having major problems, and those major problems include masses of barnacles and other marine growth covering about 40% of the bottom of the ship, which is a lot, according to Hapag-Lloyd, which is a major shipping company. Basically, everyone with ships in the Gulf are now saying they have a major problem because their ships were not designed to sit in bath water for 2 months. They were not designed to have these many barnacles and jellyfish in some cases growing on the sides of the ship. And they now have several tons more of drag than they did when the conflict started. Now, this is an issue because when, if, how they leave the Gulf, they will now require even more fuel because the drag is going to slow the ship down and add to the weight. So the cost of everything is going to go up even further than it already is. And this is a part of a general issue because in order to clean the ship, in order to get critical parts to repair the ships, in order to refuel the ships, you have to take a crew out into the Gulf on another ship and do that. And right now, that's really hard to do because you are essentially a big old sitting duck. And yeah, insurance premiums have still not gone down. So this is just a major catastrophe. And you have oil tankers with literally tons of barnacles growing on the sides of the ship in what is almost a metaphor for, well, not almost, it's a really good metaphor for what this is doing to the global economy. And it's probably just a good metaphor for the situation as a whole, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would tend to agree with that. And I was looking at some stuff earlier today, and it looks like potentially if this continues on for a few more months, you're going to have
Hmm.
people going hungry in countries where they were not expecting them to earlier this year. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with the insurance costs. Because if shipping becomes uninsurable, then essentially oil prices don't go down, trade begins to slow, economic growth slows down considerably, and the whole entire world essentially goes, what was this for? And I think the US and the American voter as well goes, what was this for in November? And I think
Oh,
it's going to
yeah.
be very hard for the Trump administration to say to the American voter that this was for stopping Iran's nuclear weapons program. I really think that's going to be a hard sell to a lot of people.
I think it's going to be a hard sell even if you have some kind of resolution, um, because I don't think it's going to be on the terms that the administration has set out for itself. But I genuinely feel like there's going to be a lot of pain at the polls in November. And if this situation is not resolved in some fashion shortly, and again, the barnacles are a great metaphor because the longer you let them sit there, the worse it gets. And that's this whole situation, whether you're talking about the cost of fertilizer or the cost of jet fuel or the cost of shipping or the cost of medicines, everything goes up and everything gets worse the longer you let it sit. If you get things up and moving again, and I feel like we said this, Dave, I feel like we said this in the first couple of weeks. If you get things up and moving quickly, it's less painful. The
Hmm.
longer you let it sit, the worse the consequences are going to be. I think across the board, economic, but definitely political. If you start a fight and you don't know how to finish it, you are going to have problems, particularly if people are feeling the pinch in the grocery store, at the gas station. These are going to be major problems if you have a big election coming up.
Well, I think the key to this is those people that are feeling the pain, how do you frame the Iran war to them that this was worth it? And I think that's going to be the key. If you
I,
can
I,
frame it
I don't
correctly,
see
I think
that.
it's if you can frame it in a way that it fits in with their narrative and the way that they see the world, I think it can work. But I think more and more people are going, this is not worth it because they're so
Yeah.
disconnected with what's going on over there. And I think people too now, we just talked about it. People are starting to go, well, I'm going to be losing my job in potentially 3 months or 6 months because of AI. There are layoffs
Hmm.
coming in my industry, and great. This is perfect timing. Prices are going up, and I just lost my job.
Yeah. Perfect storm. And I think regionally, things are not getting better. And it's also, I think there was a failure, or there has been a failure, not just from the US, but from other countries, to prevent Iran from asserting control over the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, people said we weren't going to let that happen, and it happened. And now you're in a world where there are a lot of countries paying for tolls. There are a lot of countries paying for their ships to get through. They're not talking about it because they don't want to get flack, but it is happening, and Iran is getting payment from the Strait. So now that that has been allowed to happen, I fail to see how we're going to be able to walk it back. Now that it's been established, this is key leverage. I think I don't think they're going to give it up. And we haven't been able to muscle them out of doing it.
Well, I
So
think
this is
on those,
it's a huge problem.
yeah, and on those same lines, you had a very delicate balance in the Gulf before this kicked off,
Which is totally upset
which
now.
is completely upset. And I think now, moving forward, the longer this goes on, the more those countries in the Gulf are going to be looking for an exit ramp, some way to either get out of this or some way to end this. And I think the key to
Yeah.
this whole entire region now is that Pakistan is much more involved militarily than it was in the past. And I think that is really going to disrupt the balance of these Gulf states in the next 2 to 3 years. potentially even longer.
Well, and again, there are advantages and disadvantages to tying yourself to everyone else. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have had a very close relationship for a very long time. That is not new. There's nothing new about that. There's been a Pakistani military presence in the Middle East, particularly in the Gulf, since at least the 70s. That's not new. What is new is now you have a formalized defense pact where you could potentially deploy up to the number I saw was around 80,000 ground troops in Saudi Arabia. That is a, by the way, massive chunk of the Pakistani army. And this is now going to draw in India because India's not wildly happy about one of the richest countries in the world allying with a neighbor that they have a terrible relationship with at the moment. Also, people will correct me, and I hope I'm wrong to an extent, but it seems like Pakistan has decided that overextension is the best policy. They are dealing with massive security and just economic issues at home. They're trying to be a neutral party in the Iran war, despite the fact that, again, they've deployed around 8,000 troops to Saudi currently. They have, I think, one or two squadrons of JF 17s parked in the east. They are massively involved in this conflict, and they're going, no, no, we're a neutral broker. And I don't think, no one believes that. I mean, kudos to them for trying, but no one actually believes that. You have you just have the dynamic in the Gulf we've been talking about, where basically everyone hates each other, and the three largest countries at the moment are really very unhappy with each other for a variety of different reasons. It's just, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know how many ways I can say it's a mess.
Yeah. The apple cart has definitely been tipped.
The apple cart has been rammed into the storefront window, which is now on fire for some reason. I mean, things are not great. And again, I think there is a sense of the one way in which I do credit the Pakistani side is they are taking this very seriously because it's really serious.
Well, for them,
They're
it's
tr
it's an element of it's
It's an
essentially
existential
yes.
issue. It's an existential issue. They have to get this sorted out, or they are even more screwed than they already are, and they're pretty screwed. I mean, it's also worth noting that throughout this entire process of them trying to facilitate negotiation between Iran and the US, they have been engaged in a massive active conflict with Afghanistan. I mean, they're still fighting a war. So they have a lot of issues. They need this to be resolved so they can continue shipping and trading with the Gulf. They can continue getting oil. They can continue getting money from Saudi Arabia. And again, it's an existential issue. The longer you let it sit, the worse it gets.
And on those same lines, too, of an existential issue, Israel has said this has been an existential issue for them as well. So you could see the Israelis still stepping up and saying, we're going to continue attacking. We're going to continue to disarm Iran. And we're going to
I
continue
mean,
to,
the issue is right now, and they have an election coming up too. Don't forget. Everything is essentially an existential issue. Now, the question is to what degree is their military strategy, and I use that term loosely, how is this lined up with the US? Because everything that they've done from February 28th on, they couldn't have done without the United States. They just couldn't have. They don't have the logistical capacity. Now, they have the logistical capacity to augment the things that we did. They had the intelligence capacity to augment the things that we did. But they could not have done those things without American tankers, American satellites, American cover in a lot of cases, us shipping. I mean, we've been giving them how many complex weapon systems since 2023? Their military economy would be non functioning without us. So they are quite tied to what we decide is a priority. On the other hand, I think you're right, where that's a very genuine issue. And there's no guarantee that the election happens and someone comes in who might not feel very differently than the current administration. It might go, this is still an existential threat. We need to do something. And will they listen to DC at this point? We don't know.
No,
So
I mean, it looks
I
like they did a couple of days ago, potentially.
potentially.
Still, you have no idea.
No. No, it's a major wild card, I would say, is what are they going to do? Because certainly with regards to Lebanon, they don't seem to be listening to America. With regards to Syria, they don't seem to be listening to America. With Iran, again, it seems to an extent they have. But if they view an agreement as being too conciliatory or too generous, I would not be surprised if we see something from the state of Israel. There's just so many wild cards in all of this, man. You could just go in so many different directions so easily.
Hmm.
And it connects. Again, it's a part of the world that's just close to everything. So you're close to South Asia, and you're close to East Africa, and you're close to the Mediterranean. You're on the Eastern Mediterranean. And it means that the ramifications of what goes on in this part of the world are just felt more keenly everywhere, even in the United States.
And it will continue to affect whatever happens, whether the war in Iran ends and you do have some sort of a peace that's holding, or you have the countries go back to a kinetic war. It's going to have an effect, and it's going to take, I think, a few months for this to really, really come forward, but it's going to happen.
I mean, we'll just end on this. I was having a conversation earlier today with a friend, and he just straight up asked, when do you think it's going to end? And I said, I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to end in the sense that I don't think whatever happens, we're going to go back to a situation where the Gulf looks the same. I just don't think so. I don't think access to the Gulf is ever going to be the same. I don't think the geopolitical makeup of the Gulf is going to be the same after this. Do I think there will be a settlement? I do. I think there's going to be a settlement. I think there's going to be an agreement probably in the next couple of months. But do I think trade will resume as it was before? I do not. And I think people want it to go back to that. I just don't see it happening. I think we're entering into a new phase of how that region is economically organized. And I think it's going to take people a very long time to figure out the ramifications of that. But I don't think we can go back to before February 28th. I don't think that's happening.
Well, I don't think so either. And if you look at what the UAE's done in the last month, they've obviously left OPEC. You look at
Yeah.
how Pakistan has inserted themselves. They've brought this military alliance to fruition, where
Hmm.
it's a real thing. It's not just something that's written on paper. It's a legitimate agreement between these countries. And I think this brings in the idea to a lot of these Gulf states that, well, the United States was there primarily, I would say, keeping the peace before February 28th. And now you're going to have a lot of other states.
Yep.
Turkey might jump in. Pakistan's already in there. India may want to get their fingers in there too.
Egypt.
Israel, Egypt. and it's going to get a lot more crowded, and it's probably going to be a lot hotter than it was in
A
terms of
hundred
relations
percent.
between all of these countries.
I think it's, this sounds overblown. I don't think it is. Whether or not it's the case globally, it's absolutely the end of Pax Americana in the Middle East. That's gone. There's not one big thing floating in the sky. Now you have a lot of different actors, and they're all getting involved. I mean, again, they're already involved to an extent. You look at, the sort of the country in the Gulf we don't talk about, Qatar. There are already a couple thousand Turkish troops there. Those Pakistani troops, I guarantee, a lot of them didn't have to be moved. They were there already. But now all of these deployments, all of these treaties, all of these shifting alliances, they're going to become much more concrete. And as you said, they're going to become much more active. And yeah, the temperature in the hot tub's going up.
Oh boy.
Don't let it get
Time to
too
put
hot in the
on your
hot tub.
time to put on your bathing suit, Gavin, and take a dip.
Just don't get any barnacles on you, folks.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, on that really terrible note, thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your enemies, share with people you don't know that you bumped into on the street. And if we said something that was clearly stupid and needs correcting, please tell us.
Yeah, throw some
Uh,
rocks our way.
well, just crumple up some paper or something.
Mm. You're more of a spitwad guy.
We shouldn't be encouraging people to throw rocks when we live in glass houses. What I always say. Anyways, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you
Yep,
soon.
we'll be back. Thumbs up.
here on On the Fringe.